Good evening. It is Tuesday, the 9th of May, and day 25 of Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. What a day. What a day it was. We'll get right to it. The prosecution rested, and then an hour later, the defense rested. So now what? We don't have a verdict. I want to make that clear. The trial is not over. We do not have a verdict, but both sides are done. Kind of. They still have closing arguments, but they're done with their witnesses. They're done presenting evidence. They're done, except for those closing arguments, which will happen probably on Thursday. So an interesting day. We'll go through it all and break it all down, and then a lot of you have questions, and I have a favor. I have a favor to ask those of you who have been coming to court, who I've met, and many of you who I haven't, and so many of you who are just watching. I want to get you more involved in this show tomorrow night. I want to have interaction with you. So let me get through the court images first. We have, actually, let me explain what happened first today. We had two witnesses on the stand. The first one we've heard from before, Nicole Heidemann. She's the FBI data analyst. She got on the stand. She talked about a few different things, some text messages that were kind of raunchy that we'll play here in a minute. And then we heard from Nick Edwards. He's the lead investigator for the Attorney General's office. And that's all. That's all who we heard from. So here we have Heidemann on the stand. Here's a couple of images of Lori today. Here is a sketch of Judge Boyce. Here is Lori with her attorneys and the defense attorney, the defense investigator there on the right. Here is a shot of the audience. And you can see Larry and Kay there in the back. We're going to talk about them in just one moment and some other people. That's the prosecution area right there, where the prosecutor witnesses have been able to sit. So Larry and Kay were there this morning in the courtroom, and then this afternoon, they were not there. And I was first aware that something was going on when we saw EMTs coming in the building. And Larry was not feeling well, and this is the statement that Kay gave to me to pass along to you all. She said, "Thank you all for your concern. This trial has been overwhelming, to say the least. Today, Larry was overcome with emotions causing him to feel sick. EMTs checked him and he was okay. We came to our apartment and he took a nap. We're relaxing the rest of today and again tomorrow, since the jury instruction will be later in the day. We appreciate your support and prayers." So he's doing okay tonight, and they wish to thank you all for your concern. I know a lot of people were concerned. It's always scary when EMTs show up in the courthouse, and they were in a private room there on the outside of the courtroom, and the EMTs were chatting with them. So they are doing okay. So I thank you. The other big development today, you all will get to see the verdict. It's going to be televised. We put in a request to have it live streamed, and the judge granted it, but it's a little different. We said that we would bring in our cameras and set it up. The judge said no, but we'll give you the court feed. So you can trust EastIdahoNews.com. Wherever you're watching right now, we will have the verdict on that channel. If you're watching on East Idaho News YouTube, be sure that you subscribe and hit that bell, because then you will get an alert the minute we go live with that verdict. In fact, we're going to go live before the verdict, just so you know that it's coming. If you're watching on the Meetin' the Eatons YouTube, subscribe and hit the button. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure you're following and that you've liked the page. The verdict will not come tonight. It will not come tomorrow. Could come Thursday, could come Friday, anytime after Thursday. But you all will get to see the verdict live as it happens. In case you can't watch, I'll be in there still doing my daily notes, and then you can watch it later, and then we'll go live coverage. Right when that verdict happens, I'm going to run out of the courtroom, and we'll have our camera guy there set up, ready to go live, and I'll break everything down. So whenever that happens, I hope that you'll watch and that you can, see this thing through the end. Okay, speaking of seeing this thing through the end, before we get to tonight, I have to tell you what happened right before I came on. I got home and I said, I am going to get on my PJs and do the show in my pajamas. So I did. And as I went to put on this shirt, I said, gosh, this shirt is so old. I need a new t-shirt. And I realized this is the exact same shirt I was wearing the day that I found Lori and Chad in Hawaii. And I was with Eric Grossarth, our intern at the time. And we actually didn't think anything would be happening that day. So I wasn't dressed at all, just in the black t-shirt, this shirt. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to watch that video and just see. Just see. Yes, I've had the shirt for over 3 years. I mean, guys, we don't throw out our clothes. I hope that's not gross, but obviously now it's my PJ shirt. But I want to play that video if it's okay. I hope it's not too self-serving for me to play it. I'm just getting it queued up here. Because we now know the answers to so many of the questions that I had that day. I think I asked her 23 questions in that 3 minutes or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. But think about what we know now, today, after all the witnesses have been called, after it's over, almost, except for closing arguments and jury instruction. We're not going to hear from anybody else on the stand. If you don't mind, I'm going to play this, and then we'll talk about what happened today. I'm Nate Eaton with EastIdahoNews.com in Kauai, where Chad and Lori Daybell were served with 2 search warrants just hours ago. Law enforcement officers from eastern Idaho, along with federal agents and the Kauai Police Department, pulled Lori and Chad over. They were driving a black SUV. They pulled into this resort where I am standing. They put Chad into one vehicle, Lori into another. That's when their vehicle was seized and they had no way to get home. We had a chance to ask them so many questions that need answers. Lori, Nate Eaton with East Idaho News. Can you tell me where your kids are? Where are your kids?
No comment.
No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Where are your children? Yeah, why don't you just give us a comment? Just tell us where they are. Chad, where are Lori's kids? What happened to Tammy, Chad? Can you tell us what happened to Tammy? Why have you guys been in Hawaii for so long? Listen, just tell people what's happening. There's people around the country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great. That's great that they're praying for you, praying for your kids. What? You have nothing to say? Did you do something to your children? Are your children still alive? That's a simple question. I've got 3 kids of my own. I can tell you every minute where my kids are at. Where are your children? What do you guys plan to do now? You have 5 days to get your children in front of a judge in Rexburg, then what? Are you guys innocent of any crimes? Have you committed any crimes? Chad, you guys have a lot to say on your podcast. You don't have anything to say now? Lori? Do you believe that you were instructed by God or others to do something for your children? If you could give a message to them, what would you say? Listen, if you just talk to us, we'll leave you alone.
The family's worried. Tammy's family's very worried.
Tammy's family's very worried. Lori, your mother, Kay, came out. Kay and Larry, they're offering a $20,000 reward for your children. And you're over here on the beach? This is your chance to tell your story. Nothing you want to say? One last chance right here? Anything you want to say to the people in Idaho? Lori, you have a lot of cash there in your baggie. Were you guys planning to leave Hawaii? Were you planning to take off? And with that, Chad and Lori darted into this resort, and they still have not come out. Now, police have not said what they are searching for in that SUV or in their home, but one thing that was not found is Lori's children. JJ and Tylee are still missing. Tomorrow, we will have much more from Hawaii. For now, I'm Nate Eaton reporting for EastIdahoNews.com. It's crazy to look back and think if we only knew then what we knew now, what we know now. We know where the kids were. We know what happened to Tammy. We know what was inside that SUV. We know where the money in the bag came from and that there was more in the SUV, around $5,500 more. What else did I ask? We don't know. Well, I asked if God told them to do something for their kids, to their kids. We don't know if Lori believed that because she didn't really testify about that. But we know a lot. We know a lot. It's crazy to look back. That was January 25th of 2020. I remember because it was my dad's birthday. And here we are, May, on day 25. Isn't that interesting? Day 25 of the trial, May 9th. Okay, so wanted to get that in there. That was not shown in court. Many of you were asking. It was not shown in court. But, man, Lori looks so different from that day to this day. I was talking with Keith Morrison this afternoon. We were talking about that she's aged. And full disclosure, I have two. So not picking on her. Okay, here we go. So the testimony today. Nicole Heidemann, FBI analyst. This was all about the James and Elena romance story. The story that Chad sent to Lori on text messages, multiple text messages, this FBI analyst was charged with gathering it all and putting it together. And Lindsay Blake, the prosecutor, asked her repeatedly, so in the story, what are the similarities between James and Elena, these fictional characters, and Chad and Lori? Well, they both met at a conference. James and Elena went to the temple together right after meeting at the conference. So did Chad and Lori. Elena went to James's hometown after meeting him. So did Chad and Lori. On and on. Not the differences, but the similarities between both of these stories. And then it got to the part about I say it's a romance novel, but I guess you could call it that. It's kind of sexually charged. And this is where the prosecutor asked, I'm queuing up the video, Miss Heidemann to talk about, there were a lot of sexual references in the story, which if you want to read, again, it's at EastIdahoNews.com. Google romance novel Chad Daybell and you'll find it on our site. Lindsay Blake. I'm sorry. I go back and I hear about some of these. I don't watch them. And I'm sure there's so many nights it doesn't make sense because so many names in my head. For instance, last night I misspoke and said that Charles Vallow converted to I said Chad Daybell converted to the LDS church. I meant Charles Vallow. Chad Daybell was born into the church and raised and went on a mission and graduated from BYU with a degree in communication. Wrote for a newspaper for a time. Charles Vallow converted to the Mormon church when he met Lori. That's what I meant. I apologize for the confusion, but I heard it from you. I appreciate you all who emailed me. Okay, let me play some of the... So Lindsay Blake talked about the sexual content, sexual messages, and the feeling of love and being together and being intertwined with James and Elena. And then she had Ms. Heidemann, the FBI analyst, read some of the messages between Chad and Lori. I guess I'll put a graphic warning here. It's not like XX rated, but it's kind of graphic. So turn the kids away. Turn it down. I don't know if kids should be watching this anyway. Hi, kids, if you are. Here we go.
To who the message was sent and who it was from.
The timestamp was August 9th, 2019 at 9:29:47 p.m. It is a text message from Chad to Lori.
And if you would just read the last two sentences of that.
He kissed her deeply as their breathing slowed. They entwined their bodies and held each other tightly before soon beginning another powerful round of pleasurable bonding.
And then, Your Honor, I'm asking now to display some of the messages that were recovered from those iCloud accounts.
They can be published.
Can you see that on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
And can you indicate to who and from that message was sent?
Since these were recovered from the iCloud, from owner would be Lori's iCloud, to Bubby, which was attributed to Chad Daybell on, again, August 9th, 2019.
And was it close in time to that last message?
Yes, the last message was 9:29:47 p.m. and this is 9:36:03 p.m.
And can you read what the message says?
With the emojis?
Yes.
Okay. That is pretty incredible. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. The fire is definitely burning. The memories. Hearts, hearts, hearts. I miss you way too much. You have to stop or I might explode.
And then if we go to the next message. Do you recognize this message?
Yes.
And can you indicate who it was sent from and who it was sent to?
Again, from owner would be Lori's iCloud account to the Bubby 515 number attributed to Chad.
And can you read that message into the record?
The intensity of each encounter in my mind, one greater than the last. Oh my. Fire emoji, especially this last one. I've never loved you more. Heart emoji. It just keeps growing. Kiss emoji.
And then if we go to the next one. Can you indicate who this was sent from, who it was sent to, and then read it into the record?
It was sent from the Bubby 515 number attributed to Chad to the iCloud's owner, Lori. I completely agree. We were definitely in new territory in your bedroom.
And then the next one. And can you indicate the date and time, who the sender was, and who it was sent to?
From the 515 Bubby attributed to Chad to the iCloud owner, Lori.
And can you read into the record the message?
Elena's magic hand has gripped the storm, and they stare into each other's eyes, barely able to breathe as intense waves wash over them.
And then the next message. Can you indicate who the sender was, who it was sent to, and then read it into the record?
From the iCloud owner, Lori, to 515 Bubby attributed to Chad. The text content was, yes, she did.
Did that appear to be in response to the previous message from Chad?
It did.
And then I think there's some additional text in between, but if we skip down, I think it was line 1033. Can you indicate who that was sent from, who it was sent to, and the date?
From the Bubby 515 attributed to Chad to the iCloud owner attributed to Lori. The text says, I love you, Elena. What a wonderful chemistry we share. Fire emoji, fire emoji.
And then if you could read 1032, if you can actually indicate who it was sent from, who to, and then read it into the record.
From iCloud owner, Lori, to Bubby 515 number attributed to Chad. I love you more. That's so hot. I just need you now more than ever. I just need you more than ever. Heart emoji, heart emoji.
And then line 1031, can you indicate who it's from, who it's to, and the date?
From the 515 Bubby number attributed to Chad to iCloud owner Lori. You are amazing. Please save that segment. I want to read it with you naked, then relive it all.
Now you should have me. Hope you enjoyed hearing that. Sometimes, they tell you to keep a poker face in the courtroom, don't let anybody know what you're thinking. And sometimes it's hard to keep that straight face. But those were the messages. And did you catch that they were all sent before Tammy died? About a month after Charles died. So many of you were talking about the storm. If you want to know what the storm means, go in yesterday's and read about it. The producer sitting next to me in court today from Law and Crime, she's like, my dog's name is Storm, and I'm so offended I'm going to have to change the name. Poor dog. Poor Chihuahua. Okay, so that was about it with Miss Heidemann. They ended it with that. And then Nicholas Edwards, he's the Attorney in General's lead investigator. He's got an extensive background. He worked for the Pocatello Police Department. He's been through all sorts of training. And he was the last witness for the prosecution. I don't want to say there wasn't anything new, but we've heard a lot of this. He went through texts. He went through Alex's movements on the night Tammy died. One thing that was interesting to me, he pointed out that Tammy normally parked on, there's a driveway at the back of the house, and she would go in the back door. But on this particular night, she parked in the front driveway, which makes me wonder if the shooter, Alex, was prepared to shoot at her from the side. And because she parked in the front, maybe his plan was thrown off and he had to run around and he got spooked, which is an interesting point. Had she parked at that back driveway, what would have happened? The investigator talked about AR guns versus paintball guns. And of course, he has extensive training on that because he was a member of the SWAT team. He talked about finding the kids' bodies. And he said the minute he saw JJ, he thought of his own son. He talked about text messages between Chad and Lori. And unfortunately, many of those texts, I think that there were 92. There was a massive amount of text on the 9th of October, 2019, the day that Tammy was shot at in the driveway. That whole day, Alex was texting, Lori was texting, Chad was texting. They were all going back and forth. And of course, the shooting was not successful, and Chad was texting Alex after the attempted shooting. But we don't know what those texts were. Some of them didn't back up in the cloud. They weren't stored. We do have all of the texts that were stored in Lori's iCloud. So that's kind of where it's at. Nicholas Edwards finished his testimony. By the way, you can go listen to all this. We've got it on our YouTube channel. Today was under 3 hours total for the audio. And then the prosecution asked if they could clear up a clerical error on the indictment. Now, this indictment was issued May of 2021, so 2 years ago. And apparently, in the footnote, there was the number 3A turned to 4A, or vice versa. They cited the wrong charge. Instead of grand theft by deception, which it said in the text and on the headlines of each section, in the footnote, it said it's cited to grand theft with intent to conspire against another. I believe that's what I wrote. I'm sorry. Grand theft with intent to deprive another. So it's the same grand theft underneath, but they put the wrong number in the bottom. So they asked the judge to clarify that, to switch it, because you'd hate to send that into a jury. And then the jury, you're stuck with that indictment, even if there's mistakes. There was another minor mistake. Month should have been months, or vice versa. Months should have been month. So the judge said that was fine. The defense objected to this change and said it's a fatal error on behalf of their client. Probably a bit of a stretch, but it's important that you get it 100% right. Could you imagine if the wrong code was sourced or something, or the wrong Idaho rule was sourced and it results in a mistrial? And the judge did express some frustration. He's like, you are about to rest. We have been here for 5-6 weeks and you're just saying this now. You've had 2 years and you've got a whole team of attorneys and you're just seeing it now. And the prosecution said it was a clerical error. And, perhaps it was. Maybe it's just one of those oversight things. Sometimes, I'll look at stories I've written and I'll have 5 editors go through it and finally we'll publish it and there'll be a typo in the first sentence that everyone overlooked. So I'm not necessarily faulting them, but it's a major thing. And the judge did say it's fine. He did allow the change because, the headline for each charge said grand theft by deception, and then the text in the body of each charge also said grand theft by deception. So it was just the footnote that was off. But the defense objected, as they probably should. And then Lindsay Blake said the state rests. We have no further witnesses. And then the judge said, okay, we're going to take a little break. We'll come back and meet with the defense. The defense came and Jim Archibald asked judge to consider Idaho Rule 29, which is a motion for a judgment of acquittal. He asked the judge to consider an acquittal. Now, I've spoken with some attorneys, and I found out tonight that this is common. This is not abnormal. I think it's done. It's a routine ask that might be more for an appeal purpose. And once that happens, the judge took it under advisement, but he didn't say, all right, we're going to acquit her. It's done. But that was kind of common. And after that, Jim Archibald said, okay, we need time to meet with our client. We need personal time. We need a private room. We need 15 minutes to decide how we're going to do this defense. And I had heard that Lori was not taking the stand this morning. I had heard that it was debated often over the past 6 weeks, daily, hourly sometimes. Is she going to take the stand? Is she not? Some days she wanted, some days she didn't. And I heard this morning she's decided she's not going to take the stand. It's her call. She's the defendant. But in this 15, 20, actually it was like a 30-minute window of time, it was just Jim, Archibald, John Thomas, Lori, and Brandon Hobbs, the defense investigator, and a guard, a bailiff. And they said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? So everybody was anxious. What's she going to do? Is she going to take the stand? I think everybody wanted her to take the stand. I wanted her to take the stand. I mean, it'd be fascinating to hear from her. But after 30 minutes, we all go back in the courtroom. We wait for the judge to come on the stand. I'll never forget walking into the courtroom after that break. I look over at Lori and she's got a big smile on her face. Now that happens every day with her, to be honest. But that's kind of the image I have of Lori. She was smiling. And then here is what happened from there. What we heard Lori speak. I don't recall if she spoke. She may have spoken the first day of the trial where the judge talked about the charges and if she understood them. She may have. I'm not really sure. But we heard her speak today. So I'm going to play out what happened.
624 State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. The state has rested its case in chief. We took a recess. A Rule 29 motion for judgment of acquittal was argued and taken under advisement by the court. Counsel for the defense wished to have time for a privileged and private communication with their client regarding proceeding forward at this time. So let me inquire of the defense now. Mr. Archibald, have you and Mr. Thomas had an opportunity to consult with your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
And how does the defense intend to proceed going forward?
Your Honor, we don't believe the state has proved its case, so the defense will rest.
Very well. Does the defense then I'll just inquire of your client, Mr. Archibald. So, Ms. Vallow, you do have the Fifth Amendment right to, in this case, according to the Fifth Amendment, it's guaranteed by the United States Constitution that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against themselves, and this privilege applies to Idaho through the 14th Amendment. That guarantees that no person may be compelled in a criminal case to testify. So you do have that right and will maintain that right. And is it your decision to continue to maintain that right and not testify in this matter?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you for your response, and I appreciate counsel discussing that with your client. With that in mind, counsel, I believe we'll have the jurors brought back in. Mr. Archibald, if you intend to rest, let me just clarify with this Rule 29 motion, if you are going to rest, I think I would be reserving a decision on that under Rule 29B. Is that your understanding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the court will consider the motion under Rule 29B then, and it will remain under advisement, and the court will issue a ruling on that in due course. So with that in mind, we'll have the jurors brought in. Counsel, the court's schedule at this point would then have the jurors excused for the day. Tomorrow, the court will spend the day working.
Okay, and then he goes over the schedule for the next few days, but from there, the jury is brought in, and Jim Archibald says the same thing. We do not believe that the prosecution, that the state has proven their case, and we will rest. We will rest. The defense really can't really argue their case without witnesses, without evidence to put up there. And they could have the prosecution ended up calling 60 witnesses. I said 61 earlier, but I realized the one had been called twice, so 60 witnesses. Defense could have done the same thing. We could have been here another 5 weeks. But Jim Archibald said early on that we probably wouldn't because they had very few, if any, witnesses, and now we know they had zero, not one witness to defend Lori Vallow Daybell, not one. So what happens now? Tomorrow, the prosecution, the defense, and the judge are going to get together, and they're going to come up with jury instructions. And it should be long. It'll be long, I think. I think that it'll take a while. They'll come up with the instructions. The jury will come again on Thursday morning. The judge will read them the jury instructions, give them to them, and then there will be closing arguments by the prosecution and by the defense. Closing arguments can take an hour. They can take 5 hours. I don't know if the judge is going to put a time limit on them. I know that for opening statements, the prosecution took about 40 minutes maybe, and the defense took about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. It was short. I don't think closing statements, closing arguments will be super long. I think it's quite possible by Thursday afternoon the jury could have this case. And then they will deliberate. And they could deliberate all day Friday. They could deliberate. I don't know if the judge will sequester them through the weekend. He hasn't talked about that. I don't see that happening. It is Mother's Day weekend. So I don't think anyone would be happy about that. There's also a chance come Thursday, he gives them the instruction and closing arguments, and he says, we'll take Friday off and come back next week. I don't know if I foresee that. So there's a lot there. There's a lot that could happen. And one thing's for sure, we'll likely have a verdict a week from now. If we don't have a verdict a week from now and the jury is still deliberating, that could be interesting. That could be interesting. That could be fascinating. There is so much evidence here that all it takes is 1 or 2 jurors to be like, okay, we want to go through every piece of evidence just to be sure. And remember, they've got the conspiracy charges. They've got the murder charges. They've got the grand theft charges. Can they agree to find guilt on one and not another? Absolutely. The jury could come back and say, we find guilt on the conspiracy charges, but we're a hung jury on the murder charges. Or we're a hung jury on the grand theft charges. They can absolutely have a partial verdict. Then it's up to the state, if it's a hung jury, do we do a mistrial? If Lori's convicted on all the conspiracy and the grand theft, do they go back and try to get her again for murder? Or when she's sentenced, if she gets a life sentence on the conspiracy, which she can, do they say, we're fine with that? So the jury could come back and find not guilty across the board. The jury could come back and find guilty across the board. So really, it's up to the jury. The other interesting thing here is we have all 18 jurors still. Not one was lost during the trial. Only 12 of them will deliberate. So when they come back Thursday morning, the judge is going to say, all right, 6 of you, we don't need you. You've been here for 5 or 6 weeks. See ya. I'm told that it'll probably be a lottery type system where he'll just draw the names out like, Nate, you're on. Erica, you're off. I don't know how. It's going to be random selection from what I understand. There's 10 men on the jury, 8 women. My question to you, would you want to stay or would you want to go? Like, would you be to the point if you think if you were on this jury that you would want to stay and stick around and deliberate, or would you say, nah, I'd be fine to go. I'm good. This has been too much. It's fascinating to me. I was thinking today that 5-6 weeks ago, none of these people knew each other, as far as we know. None of these people knew the case much, if any. And here they are, and they've all been stuck in this courtroom together. And it was fun to watch them today during the break, chatting with each other. I mean, these guys have experienced something that is kind of unreal. They've been thrown into this high-profile case, and I'm sure some of these jurors will be friends for life. Some of them may never want to remember this again. They might run from this. That reminds me, it's like Juror Appreciation Week in the state of Idaho. And many of you have asked if the jurors get counseling. And I found out that, let me read to you what I was told when I asked, will the jurors get counseling in this? First of all, Idaho's judicial branch is honoring its jurors during Juror Appreciation Week this week. One of the most significant actions Idaho's courts can take is to show appreciation to the citizens who annually give their time and talents to serve on juries, Chief Justice J. Richard Bevan wrote. I asked, one of the questions I've been getting is, do the courts provide counseling for jurors after trials are over? And I was told, the courts in Ada County appreciate jurors' service to the community and provide resources to them to make them as comfortable as possible, both during their service and after a case is over. This may include counseling services. Exact services for a particular juror and how those services are delivered will vary based on their situation and case. So I think it is a possibility if a juror did want counseling that the state would cover it. And I think the same thing with a clerk, with the judge, with the attorneys, with anybody associated with it. They could get counseling if they need it. So that's where we stand. Tomorrow I'll be back here. We'll do another Courtroom Insider and then we'll keep going. However, I do want to tell you that seating for the verdict is first come, first serve. Because they're going to televise it, they're not doing the ticket system. So once the jury is set to deliberate, I'm not leaving the courthouse. I'm going to be there. So if that's Thursday and I'm in the courthouse till 10 o'clock, we obviously won't do a Courtroom Insider. If they dismiss everyone at 5 and I'm able to come back, we'll do something. I will keep you updated, though, on it. And then when the verdict comes in, we'll still do a Courtroom Insider. And then I want to do a wrap-up show or two when it's all done, just to kind of tell you what I've learned, what I have observed, and some takeaways that I feel comfortable now sharing that I haven't before, if that makes sense. Also, if you have come to the courthouse anytime over the past 6-7 weeks and been in the courtroom, I want to hear from you. I'm wondering if you can send me on my Facebook page a quick 20-second video of you, a selfie video, saying, hi, my name's Marlene. I went to the courthouse twice or 3 times, and here was my biggest takeaway. And keep it short. Don't give me 2 minutes. Keep it short, because I want to play a bunch of these tomorrow or the next day. And I think the easiest way for you is to just send them to me on my Facebook page. I'm not going to give out my cell phone number, but if you just do that, then I'm going to put together a montage and play them for all of you, the viewers, because everybody has a different takeaway. And I feel like, in an odd way, that I've met so many really cool friends over the past few weeks. You all have been amazing to, first of all, be watching this. Do you know our website crashed this afternoon when I posted that the defense and prosecution had rested? We are getting a massive server tomorrow to handle the web traffic. Thanks to you all. I can't thank you enough. And I can't thank you enough to the kind woman who brought me lunch yesterday in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle box, to the gifts. Somebody brought me some lotion that's called Working Hard, I think, and for your hands, because they said I'm the hardest working guy. I'm not. Anyway, you all have been great, and I appreciate all the gifts, and I appreciate everything that you've been doing. Okay, so there's a lot of questions. I might spend a little extra time tonight on the questions. If you're not interested, you can tune off. But let me get to here where I'm going. There are a lot of questions. I'll try to answer as many as I can that I know that I can. And again, my colleague Peggy pulls these for me, so I have not read them at all before we're going. Robert, is it possible to have a hung jury on one charge but not the others? Yes, it is. We just talked about that. It is. Debbie asks, where are Melanie Boudreaux's kids? Does she have custody or does Brandon? Has Brandon remarried? Brandon has remarried. I believe it's a shared custody arrangement. I don't know all of the particulars. I do know that it is still playing out in court. Alicia asks, is the defense resting like this some sort of tactic to make jurors think defense had no choice? Perhaps. I'm sure there's strategy behind it, and it could just be that they had no defense. Why the smiley demeanor? How were the defense attorneys looking? Did they talk to you in any manner? Shadra asks. Well, Lori's always kind of had a smiley demeanor. She kind of goes back and forth. The defense attorneys were looking like they normally look. Yes, I've spoken to them many times off the record in passing. I've known both of these guys and the prosecutors for years. So we've talked. They're friendly, and I don't know if there was any sort of surprise, if that makes sense. Ginger says, I've wondered the whole time, at what point do the defense attorneys look at Lori and say, you are a horrible person for doing this? How do you defend someone who's so guilty? I could never be a defense attorney. Well, it's a good thing you're not then, if you feel that way. So many of us couldn't be. A lot of us couldn't be. I think the defense attorneys are proud of their work and the fact that the U.S. Constitution guarantees you a defense. And so if you're a defense attorney, it is your job to go in there and fight for your client. Even if you think they did horrible things, you still have to fight for your client, and that is their job, their client's rights. And if you think about the defense attorneys in this case, they got her out of the death penalty. If Lori was still facing the death penalty, there would be another probably week or two of testimony if the jury found her guilty. If the jury came back with a guilty verdict, we would then have the penalty phase of the case, which witnesses would then be called, and the defense witnesses would plead with the jury, please don't give her death. And the prosecution witnesses would say, yes, she deserves death. Because the death penalty's off the table, that's no longer an issue. Do the defense attorneys personally Nate? Are they decent humans? I'm sorry. Do you know the defense attorneys personally, Nate? Are they decent humans? Yes, I know them, and yes, they're decent. Amy, so the defense asked the judge to consider a motion of acquittal. Can he do that? I thought it was up to the jury. Okay, so as I mentioned before, that's kind of a standard operating procedure to get it on the record, just for the judge to consider. The judge took it under advisement. He didn't rule, and that's what it was. Can the judge overturn a verdict? Now, I said the other night, no, it's up to the people, but I was informed after that, yes, on very rare occasions, from what I understand, the judge can overturn a verdict from a jury. I don't know how often it happens. I think it would be huge news, but whatever the verdict, I think in this case comes, that's what will happen. The judge will then have the final say when he sentences her, and we will not know Lori's sentence this week or this month. It will happen in 2 or 3 months, and it will be back in Fremont County. Yay, I'll be home. And we'll do a Courtroom Insider that night if you'll watch. So that's kind of where it happens from here. I think I'm confused. Where will the verdict be read? Where will the sentencing be announced from? It's like I'm reading your mind, Annie. The verdict will be read from here by the jury. We'll have it live. You can watch it. Right after the verdict's read, the jurors will be thanked for their service. They will leave. The judge will say it's up to them if they talk to the media. We have not approached any of them, at least I haven't, and I would get in huge trouble if I did. But I would love to talk with them after if they're comfortable talking. just to get their thoughts. There's a couple of jurors that I'd love to talk to specifically. The judge may issue a gag order and say you can't talk till after Chad Daybell's trial. I have no idea if that'll happen. If that's the case, we'll wait. I'm not going to go hound them. I'm not going to chase them down and follow their cars. There are national news outlets that have gotten in trouble before for following jurors. In fact, one outlet was kicked out of the courtroom for doing it. There are national news outlets that have entire teams of bookers whose job is to book the jurors after a verdict. East Idaho News has me. I don't have a team of bookers. So if you know any of the jurors, don't ask them now. Wait till the trial's over. I don't want to say that I was interfering. I'd love to talk to them. Can you? And honestly, see, this is why sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't be a reporter, because sometimes I'm like, you know what? I want to talk to them even if they never go on the record. I just want to talk to them. I just want to hear what they say. I want to talk to Lori Vallow. If Lori Vallow never goes on the record or goes on camera, I still want to talk to her. You might think I'm evil for saying that. I want to talk to the woman. There are times I just want to talk to the people and try to understand them. And even if I can never report it, at least in my mind, I kind of know what's happening. Of course, it's always better if they'll go on the record and they'll do an on-camera interview. But if they don't, they don't. Nancy says, can you ask a judge if closing arguments can be streamed? We did. He said no. Why did Lori end up with a public defender when Chad ended up with a private attorney? Well, Lori did have a private attorney, Mark Means. The judge said that he was not qualified to represent her and removed him from the case. And Lori needed death penalty qualified attorneys at the time, and she had no money. So the court had to appoint these attorneys. I don't know Chad's financial situation right now, but John Pryor remains on the case. He was not there today. I saw him briefly when he walked in, but then he walked out. So that's why. Do you know if Lori and Chad were able to discuss the arrangements before the trials were split? I don't think they were directly with each other, but obviously their attorneys were very much in the know and they communicated it with their clients. Shelley, is it true that a witness saw Lori making sock puppets in jail out of her own socks? I have heard that. I spoke with the woman that, and forgive me if you're watching, my TV just flipped off and it's going to start playing noise. So I'm going to turn it off. See? She told me that Lori was playing with sock puppets in the jail. I can't confirm that, but yes, I have heard that. I've got work responsibilities and family obligations, and frankly, I'm behind. I'm sorry, Jill. How long will you leave the audio up? Forever. It'll be on our YouTube channel forever. Lori, Laurie. It's very hard for me to believe this is Chad's first affair. He's got a God complex, and it seems that he was able to cheat somewhat easily. Have you heard that Chad has cheated before? I have not heard that. I also might argue that this was his first affair, and because this dynamic, bubbly, blonde woman who some would say is out of his league comes bouncing into his life, he just was smitten and went with it. And that was perhaps the first time. But I don't know. Did Melanie, the niece, know that Chad and Lori wanted to hurt one of her kids, or so it seems? They labeled one of them as dark. We know what happens to dark. I believe Melanie was aware that the kids were dark in those text messages. I believe that she was in the know. How are Lori's attorneys reacting to her whispers and constant chatting in their ears? From Pam. Well, we saw one that told her to be quiet one day. I think that they've kind of got to know Lori, and that's how she is. And they're respectful. I mean, I've seen her chatting their ears off, and they patiently listen, and they're there to do their job. They're there to represent her. Were the texts only from the account Lori for Styles, or was Lolly time also used? I'm finding it interesting that Lolly was the family nickname for Lori's sister who died young. Did this come up in court? That did not come up in court. They did say the vast majority of the texts came from one account. One account, I don't remember which one, was set up in like 2000 maybe? 2010? Something like that. And then one account was fairly new. They pulled texts from each account that they thought were relevant and brought them into court. Who is Amy? That name was brought up yesterday. I don't know who Amy is, and I asked people that I thought would know, and they didn't either. This is when Chad said in the text to Lori that JJ needs to go be with Amy. Maybe there is a real Amy before he died, or when he died, and that James would take care of his mommy, Elena. So I don't know if Amy is what Amy that name's associated to. Some of you that have gone uber deep on the case might know and might be like, I can't believe you don't know that, Nate. So if you know, put it in the comments. But I don't know. At least I can't recall right now. How do they know Chad is Raphael and James and Tylee is Hillary? I followed along this whole time and I don't recall this. Well, that's what the investigation led them to, the Hillary name. And so that's how the investigator said. They didn't go into the detail about how they figured it out, but they must have known somehow. What on earth, John, what on earth did Lori do when the storm was talked about? She didn't show any reaction. They said, what does the storm mean? And they said it's a reference to Chad's, and she just stood there. There was much more of a reaction in the audience than to her. Wouldn't it have been great if Chad was in there, though? That'll come up in Chad's trial, I'm sure. Today at 9:56, Chad and Lori's texts were being discussed. The word sholo was in a sentence. I adore you in sholo. What is the word supposed to be? Heaven forbid it's another named body part. I don't think it is. I also had that question and it was on the screen. I need to go back and listen to the audio again, and you can if you want, and be sure that that's what was said. I don't know if it was a typo on the text message exchange or if it's some other word. I don't know. Will the public get to hear the victim impact statements? Teresa asks. Yes. Normally the victim impact statements are public. Yeah, the only time that it would be no. Well, there's been times where we're not allowed to show them on camera, and the judge has not said if we'll have a camera in the sentencing, and I'm hopeful we will now that we got one for the verdict. And then if that's the case, some people like Larry and Kay, they don't mind being on camera. And imagine that moment when Larry and Kay take the stand and they get to read a victim impact statement staring at Lori Vallow. That sentencing hearing will be something else. Please tell us what will happen to the insurance money if Chad gets convicted. That's from D. Well, if you are convicted of insurance fraud, you have to pay it back. The insurance company makes you pay it back. Chad doesn't have the money to pay it back, I doubt, but they will try to retrieve it and they'll try to get every penny they can, and that's that. I don't believe the people he gave the money to, like his kids, can be charged. It would be like if some thief gave me money, I didn't know it was stolen, so they can't come after me. Unless they can prove that I knew it was stolen and didn't give it back. Allison asks, Nate, I have sure enjoyed following your coverage. Thank you. Which of any of Lori's family members had been behind her bench during the trial? Even evil Alex Murdoch had a host of family supporters behind him. Not one. Not one. The only people who have sat on the defense benches behind Lori are Brandon Hobbs, the defense investigator, good guy, and John Thomas's children. They have been there. His daughter has been there with a friend almost every day the past 2 weeks. There's been a few days his wife has come and his son has come, but that's it. That's it. When Summer came and Colby came, they were with the prosecutors, Rose. They were not with the defense. Hi, Nate. Did the jury see your attempt in Hawaii to ask Lori and Chad the location of her kids? They did not. Lori appears to be writing constantly. Could she be writing letters to Chad about what's happening in the courtroom? How does the mail work in jail? Can she send mail out? If she can receive mail, is it possible they plan their defenses? Inmates are not supposed to communicate with each other. Every single letter is read. I've had inmates write me letters, and there's a special stamp on the thing that says, like, this is inmate mail. And so you read it, and you can see who it's from and whatnot. So technically, no, they're not supposed to be writing back and forth. Maybe there's a way to smuggle in letters back and forth between attorneys. I'm not really sure. Somebody just made the point to me that Amy could be another evil spirit or something. And that's a good point. Another zombie spirit that inhabited another body, and JJ had turned dark, and so he needed to go with her. Good luck figuring it out. What 2 to 3 points of evidence are you most surprised by that the state didn't share? For me, it's 1, Nate confronting Lori and Chad in Hawaii. 2, the butt smack video in the storage unit. I just think there was so much more to share. Why didn't they? I wonder why. I want to talk about this more, but after the trial. I want to do a breakdown probably next week when I've had a moment to think about some stuff. The stuff that I was surprised was not admitted. The stuff we knew before that was not admitted. And some of the witnesses who I know were subpoenaed who did not testify. And there's more than Melanie Pawlowski. There's a few that I've just learned in the past few days that I'm like, that's interesting. Some witnesses who apparently didn't know they were under subpoena. So they watched this show and then they were told they can't testify. Don't blame me. But we'll talk about that. That's a good question. There's some evidence that I'm surprised wasn't in. I also want to talk about some of the new stuff, the brand new stuff that I didn't know, that a lot of us didn't know. So we'll still be back next week, but maybe in a few days. Can you tell me why Chad didn't put up his own property to get Lori out on bail? Instead, he's asking his neighbor. Well, his own property probably didn't have enough. He might need to combine both. If the bondsman didn't feel comfortable giving bond at $100,000 on the $1 million bond, he's got to find cash. He's got to find money. He's got to get his lady out. What would have happened if she bonded out? What do you think? You think they would have gone and disappeared, gone to Mexico, driven off a cliff? I don't know. That would be fascinating. So many what ifs. Are the preparing a people conferences still going on, or have they fizzled since all this hoopla has taken place? In my mind, I can't see people putting much merit into it after all this. They are quiet. I have tried to interview them and spoken with them and requested the podcasts and everything. And if you're watching, the invitation is still open, but they have not done any conferences since all this happened. COVID also happened. And I think they are embarrassed by a lot of this and mortified. Keep in mind, there were many people that addressed these conferences and did not do the stuff that Lori and Chad did. So, they're not all evil, horrible people. There are some that you might question why they're doing what they're doing. And of course, they were able to meet through these conferences. But, what's funny is we were looking through our archives at East Idaho News, and the conference there was one in Rexburg, I think in 2018, that we were invited to cover. I don't know if we did a story on it, but I think that another person connected to the case spoke, not connected to the case, but I won't mention her name. You probably know who I'm talking about. She spoke, and Chad was there. And man, if I could go back in time, I would have gone to that conference with a camera and gotten all sorts of video. So I don't think preparing a people still around. D, I know you must get a zillion messages one way or another. My sister and I have discussed that after this week, we will no longer get to watch your podcast or read your updates. Please announce on your podcast or post on Facebook what you will be doing after the trial if you know. We'd love to follow you again. You do such a great job. Well, that's very kind. You can still continue to follow me. I'm actually a news reporter all day, every day. I just don't cover stories like this. But I think we got to figure out a way to keep this going. And I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know if a nightly show's the answer, because I like to be with my family at night, but maybe a daily show or a weekly show looking into crime, unsolved crimes, or prominent crimes, maybe bringing on attorneys or wrongfully convicted people. Would you watch? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I know a lot of you like when Erica comes on, so we could involve her somehow. I got to tell you, though, my favorite thing to do every year, if you're new to following me or East Idaho News, at Christmas time, the past few years, an anonymous person has given our staff $1 million to give away and surprise people in our community. And we accept nominations, and you send in your nominations, and it's for people truly in need. Like, I'm washing my clothes in the sink, and I'm a single mom of 5. And we show up with cameras rolling, and we surprise people with cars, with $20,000 checks, with washer and dryers, with a whole apartment full of new furniture. And it's incredible. It's Secret Santa. The donor is anonymous. We're doing it again this year. So I hope you will come back in November and December and watch. We post them all over the place. And it's such light, and I look forward to it. It's crazy hectic, kind of like this has been, but it's so fun. So that's what I'm going to be doing in November, December. But I appreciate your kind words. What are the requirements, criteria for finding someone guilty of conspiracy to murder? Do they have to actively plan the murder or just be aware or do nothing to prevent it? We're going to go into that more tomorrow or Thursday. The judge will be very clear to the jurors on what must have been proven in court in order for a guilty verdict on each charge. He will explain that clearly. He will go through all of the charges, the murder, the conspiracy, the grand theft by deception. He'll explain it all. And then they've got to be sure, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this happened. So we'll come back to that on Thursday. Maybe tomorrow, but definitely Thursday. Do you think Chad and Lori were convinced the world was ending in 2020? Have you seen any evidence of a long-term plan post-murder? The life insurance money was a lot, but nowhere near enough to live on past a year or two. You know, I've thought about that a lot. If this wouldn't have stopped when it did, who would have been next? Would somebody have been next? What was their ultimate plan? You know, $400,000, that could probably last a couple of years, 2 or 3, 4 years, depending, but not the way they were spending money, going to Hawaii. I don't know. And maybe they really were convinced the world was going to end or not. Ted from Kentucky. I'm wondering what happened to the bodies of Tylee and JJ since they were dug up by the police at Chad's house. Are they or did they get a proper burial? Not yet. It's been evidence. And now that the trial's over, the family, the immediate family member, whoever will claim their bodies, they will discuss burials and memorials. I know Larry and Kay have expressed publicly they want public memorials for these kids, along with private services, but a public memorial in Rexburg, eastern Idaho, one in Arizona, and one in Louisiana. They want all of you to come and honor these kids, and we'll be covering that, of course. Are they ever going to discuss the storage shed information? Well, not now. Maybe in closing arguments. I guess that could come up. Also, do Chad and Lori only analyze their family and friends on the darkness scale, or do they take interest in other followers or non-involved people? Yeah, there were celebrities on that scale. By the way, I've gone past an hour tonight, so I understand if you want. I want to try to get to as many questions as you can. But Oprah apparently was the darkest person on that scale, Oprah Winfrey. And apostles with the LDS Church, leaders in the LDS Church, were also dark on that scale. And other people were on it, not just their family members. Someone asked if Chad's lawyer is privately hired or court appointed. He's privately hired. Are the jurors sequestered yet? No, and we don't know if that will happen. I finally got tickets for court tomorrow. Now what? Oh, shoot. Melanie, I don't really know what's happening tomorrow. They haven't said. What I would suggest, show up at 8. At 8:30, you'll get your ticket, and then we'll know when the courtroom's going to open for jury, for the question stuff. It might kind of be a lot of sitting around. I think that's what it will be. How much notice are you given after the jury reaches a decision? Rachel, we will get an hour's notice. We're told a press release will go out to the media saying the jury has reached a verdict. It will be read at such and such a time. At that point, we'll wait in line and we'll go in the courtroom and cross your fingers. I get a seat. I haven't been here for 6 weeks to not have a seat. Would a mistrial mean Lori goes home free? I guess, but then they'd recharge her, and then she could be arrested on that. So that's a great question. I guess yeah, because you haven't been found guilty of anything. I don't know if the charges still stand. And where's she gonna go? Wouldn't that be a question? All right, guys, I have a couple of things I want to touch on you with. I build this file of stuff like, oh, I want to talk about this. So here's what. We talked about the jury. Okay. I want to read this. I want to point out that the life insurance policy with Sugar-Salem School District was signed on September 8th, the last day Tylee Ryan was seen alive in Yellowstone. It'd be interesting to know if Chad called Lori after he got Tammy to sign her policy and told her to proceed with their plan. That's an interesting point. If Chad was like, okay, we got it signed, we're going to get some money. There's also, so many of you have asked about the death of a neighbor who died of a pulmonary embolism on September 29th of 2019. He was, quote, a nosy neighbor of Chad's, and maybe he saw something he shouldn't have. I've heard this for 2 or 3 years now, and I've asked the police, and they don't, from what I've been told, probably a year ago, they don't think that the death of the neighbor is connected to this case. So you can believe what you want to believe, but no one's been charged with that, the death of a neighbor who did die of a pulmonary embolism, and it's a coincidence from what I've been told. So I appreciate you sending me that. I got that anonymous tip that came in from a very reliable source. Okay. Please don't use my name if you share this, but my husband is from LDS Pioneers. I joined the church when I was 11 years old. We moved to Southeast Idaho at the end of 2014. My husband started following a group sharing prepping and storage ideas, and we went to the July 4th picnic get-together in 2015. We met Chad Daybell and his teenage daughter and son while in line to get a hot dog. The daughter said she helped her dad with typing for his books. She was more outgoing than Chad. I don't recall the son saying anything. Chad was on the quiet side and not one to bring attention to himself. He came across as modest and very nice. His wife was not there. I gathered she was elsewhere, busy with the other kids. My husband and others attending have read some of Chad's books. I remember it was stressed as fiction. I think it was a couple of Chad's books my hubby wanted me to read, but I didn't get far because I felt dark. I like happy and light. This was so long ago, I don't know for certain how I felt. In the podcast my husband's followed, there's been nothing like this with Lori. When Tammy died, we went to her viewing in Utah and would have attended her funeral the following day, but we attended my husband's aunt's funeral. The line at Tammy's funeral was long, and we were standing with people who didn't know Tammy but were there to support Chad and the kids. I remember telling my husband how hard it must be for Chad to keep repeating the happenings to a long line of people. We did have a brotherly, sisterly love for the Daybell family we were barely acquainted with. When it was our turn, Chad was first. We did talk a bit as the line was held up with folks speaking to his children. As we gave our condolences and asked if the death was expected, he said she had a recent cold, and they all thought that's what it was. He said he was usually a fairly light sleeper, so it was highly unusual to sleep through the night. We asked, "What will you do now?" And he said he was possibly going to write in Hawaii. To us, it made sense as a place to get away and grieve. We heard there was going to be a memorial in Idaho, so we went. The information was incorrect. We ended up going to a funeral home to find the correct stake center. We arrived into the service and ended up in the cultural hall. Chad was seated on the stand and was on camera whenever someone was at the podium. He was sitting on the first seat to the right of the podium. He looked sad and thoughtful. I don't remember him shedding tears. Teachers shared about Tammy and students from the school, and they attended the memorial service with their parents, a lot of students. Tammy was well loved. It was a huge shock for everyone. Afterwards, my husband spoke to a gentleman who did the podcast, and no one was certain what would happen next. My husband quit following the group. Until this trial, I thought it was all Lori and she was framing Chad. I questioned a woman on her fifth husband. Couldn't that be seen as a red flag? Anyway, another interesting side note from one of you. Okay, I think we're good for tonight. I hope that helps. Again, let me show you where you can follow me. There's my Facebook. There's my Twitter. There is my Twitter account and also my Instagram account. And then you can follow our East Idaho News YouTube channel right there. And that is what we have. And that's where we're at tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I hope you have a good night. Thanks again for watching. Take care.